So we left off last time you were locked up in San Bernardino Juvenile Hall. Do believe that's where we left off on your life story. All right, what's next for Ali at that point in life?
So I get convicted for a robbery in San Bernardino Juvenile Hall. I was the only juvenile amongst a group of adults, young adults, and everybody got off except me and one other guy. And when I get back home, my mom really got down on me, man. She really ripped into me. You know, this was the first time she had to go to a trial. This was going to be my first trial that she had to attend. And man, she was hot. She was hot. Having to take off work, drive all the way out to San Bernardino, and sit in court for this. So shortly after that, we end up moving from what's considered IE, the Inland Empire, where we were living at that time. We ended up moving to Altadena with her husband. She was newly married. We ended up moving out there, and this was the beginning of high school for me. This was my 9th grade year, and I was in a new city. I'm sitting right on the border of Pasadena and Altadena, living on Mountain View in Fair Oaks. And, you know, really didn't know the geography, the lay of the land. I didn't really understand that I was living in a Crip city, like really a Crip city. That whole city of Altadena is a Crip city. And it was about to get real for me. You know, it's really a town, you know, and it has a town and country kind of feel. You have streets up in Altadena that don't have a sidewalk. It's not unusual to see people that own horses, walking their horses and things of that nature. So it kind of fooled you. But if you turn left here and a right there, you'll run right smack dab into Gang Central. You know what I mean? A corner where you can lose your life. And so I was about to get introduced to that.
Okay. What were some of the problems you had to deal with living in a Crip city? And what were some of the Crip sets in Altadena?
Well, for the most part, there was one Crip set, the Altadena Block Crips. And they're a large gang, a very serious and menacing gang. Nothing to play with. And my first task was going to be getting to school and getting home safely without getting killed. I had to catch the bus to school on Altadena Drive in Fair Oaks. This required me to walk up and down Fair Oaks, a stretch of Fair Oaks where they hung out on Harriet. My first time walking up Fair Oaks to catch the bus, it was early in the morning and they weren't out. I had on a red t-shirt, some black khakis, and some black chucks. I know I'm going to a blood school, Pasadena High School. I'm feeling good about that. That day,
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And got off the bus on Altadena Drive in Fair Oaks and had to make that walk all the way back down to Mountain View. I had to pass Harriet again. This time it's after school and they're out. They're out, like hella out. And I'm looking like, oh my God. I don't know which way to turn, left or right, because I've only been living up here for a few weeks. By the grace and mercy of God, man, I made home safely without anybody really saying too much to me or really even noticing me as I walked right past these dudes hanging out at their liquor store and their car wash and their hamburger stand. And I knew at that moment that I was going to have trouble. So I had to find another route to school. That was going to be my first task, how to get to and from a place that's supposed to be a refuge for children, school, I had to figure out how to get to and from without getting killed.
Mm. What was the typical gear for a gangster such as yourself back in the day? What were you rocking before you walked out of the house? You mentioned Chucks. You mentioned what else? What year are we talking, first of all?
We're talking 1993.
Okay, so that's when gangsters dress like gangsters. Nowadays, you don't know if you're standing next to a gangster because he could be wearing skinny jeans and, a rain jacket or something. But back then, gangsters dressed like gangsters, right?
Man, back then, you knew a gang member. Gangsters dressed like gangsters and squares dressed like squares. Now, everybody, you can't really tell. You wasn't going to see a Crip wearing all red or a Blood wearing all blue. You know what I mean? Chuck Taylors, Cortez, Nike Cortez, later on, Jordans and whatnot came in fashion for gang members, but khakis, t-shirts, sweatshirts, Pendletons, baseball caps. You could see a gang member from a mile away. No doubt in my mind, he's from somewhere. So my dress code revealed my identity.
What kind of student were you back then while you were, still active out in the streets? Were you a good student, bad student? Was it hard to focus?
When I was in elementary school, I was an A student. By the time I got to middle school, I became a B student. When I got to ninth grade, I became a C student. By the time I made it to the 12th, I was an F. Yeah, it was a steady decline, even though I went to reasonably good schools, good public schools. So I started off at Victory Baptist Day School from kindergarten through 5th grade in L.A. over on 48th and McKinley. Right, really good private school in the heart of South Central, a really small Baptist church-oriented school. From there, I got introduced to public school and started going to Parmalee, a Crip school, believe it or not, in elementary Crip school. Right? I stayed at Parmalee for a few months, about 6 months, and then we moved out towards Ontario. I got out there, I went to Grace Oakley, a really good public school out in the suburbs. Stayed there for about a year and a half or so. Then we moved again to another part of Ontario where I ended up checking into Rancho Cucamonga Middle School, another really good public school. From Rancho, I moved again, and that's when I got to high school and checked into Pasadena High School. I was in and out of juvenile camps in juvenile hall, so my studies were split between going to public school and going to probationary school, home studies. Right? In high school, I ended up going to Wilson High School in Long Beach for a little while. After I left Altadena, I went with my father. Didn't last at Wilson but a couple of months, another Crip-dominated school. I ended up going back to Pasadena again after I got out of camp. Didn't last there long. Ended up going back to camp. The last high school I went to was Bryan High School out in Bryan, Texas, another really good public school. I went to really, really good public schools that had a really, really bad gang problem.
Yeah.
And that's the story of California.
Okay. And how did you get to Bryan, Texas?
Man, I ended up going to camp a couple of times, and the last time I got out of camp, I was having trouble at Pasadena High School, and I just stopped going to school altogether. And so I ended up, they were going to send me back to camp for a third camp program, and I negotiated a deal with the judge to allow me to go to Bryan, Texas with my grandfather and finish high school out there, finish the 12th grade out there, so that I could discharge probation. And he agreed, my mom agreed, my grandfather agreed to receive me, And the next day I was on a plane out to Bryan, Texas.
Was that your first time ever leaving
2 minutes.
the hood? Okay, cool. 2 minutes. Sorry. Was that your first time leaving the hood?
No. I had been out the hood. I had been to Bryan before.
Okay.
To see my grandfather, made friends down there. So I had been out of the hood. Like I said, I lived in other parts of Southern California, the IE, Pasadena, Altadena area. So I've spent more time living outside of the projects than I have actually living in the project.